Hi everybody, it's Rob here at Trinity, and here at Trinity we're just a group of ordinary people learning to follow Jesus in our own day. Hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a rule book for life, something that would help us make every decision and solve every problem? Some people think that's what Jesus was doing in the Sermon on the Mount, but today we're going to learn otherwise. Jesus wasn't looking to give us a brand new set of rules, but a brand new relationship with God. So stick around and I'll explain what I mean. So life, of course, is full of questions. We always have these questions, messy questions, thorny questions, complicated questions, personal questions. I sometimes wonder, wouldn't it be great if there was some kind of a book you could just flip to that had the answer to all the questions that we have? Like, should I forgive somebody who hurt me? Just turn to page 136. There's the answer. Or, should I ever tell a lie to spare someone's feelings? Just turn to, page 242 and there's your answer. Should I ghost someone who's annoying me? Turn to page 42. There's your answer. Should I respond to emails while I'm in the bathroom? Just turn to page 500. You'll see the answer is no, but we all do it anyways. I know we all do it anyways. What is the right thing to do in this situation? Turn to this page. What's the right thing to do in this situation? Turn to this page. What's right? What's wrong? What is good? What is bad? Let's be honest, most of us would love to have this kind of a cheat sheet, some kind of a spiritual little rule book that would tell us the page number, give us a box to tick, tell us the right thing to do. I'm good. I've done it. I've figured it out, right? There is this guy by the name of Hank Hanegraaff, and he has this radio show. He goes by the name of the Bible Answer Man. And people phone in to Hank's show. It's actually kind of a cool show. They phone in, they ask him all these questions about the Bible, about life, about things that they're facing, and Hank always gives them an answer. In fact, Hank Hanegraaff wrote this book called The Complete Bible Answer Book. And man, everything you want to know is in there. There's chapters on everything: capital punishment, euthanasia, homosexuality, heaven, hell, money, everything. It's all neatly tied up in one little book, all of life's dilemmas. Don't we want something like this? A nice, spiritual little search bar where we type in the question we have and Google spits out the correct moral answer. Well, this summer, we are reading through the Sermon on the Mount. It is the most famous teaching ever by the most famous teacher ever, and that, of course, is Jesus. So, is this it? Is this the handbook that we have been looking for? Is this the kind of easy, new, improved, heavenly handbook for life, the divine cheat sheet that tells us all the right things and all the wrong things? All we got to do is turn here and we get our answer. Lots of people, even people who don't believe in Jesus particularly, they don't believe he's the Son of God, they don't believe he rose from the dead, would still say, I love the Sermon on the Mount. And the reason they would say that is they would say, because I see it as a code of ethics. They say it's the set of rules for living your life. And you can't blame people. You can't blame human beings. We want something black and white. We want something cut and dried. In fact, I would say that the largest religions in the world are the ones with the largest list of rules. The largest churches even in the world are usually the ones that give you the longest code of ethics to sign, the biggest sheet of answers to all your questions. Why? Because if we can just check off the boxes, say done, done, believe it, done, 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 then you know where you stand and all is well. I have to say that as a minister for now over 20 years, sometimes people come to me and they have a question. And they say, Rob, is it okay to do this? Rob, is it okay that they are doing that? Is this allowed? Is that allowed? Right? What does this mean? And they seem to want, I think this is normal, they seem to want their pastor to chime in with a particular pronouncement on a particular question that they have. And maybe over the years there's been times when I've been able to kind of say something that helped or gave them some wisdom or maybe even had an answer for the question. Hank Hanegraaff, the Bible Answer Man. But many times I struggle, actually, because I don't think that Jesus gave us this divinely authorized FAQ manual. And all you got to do is just turn to the right page and then read the correct ruling. Well, today we learn that the Sermon on the Mount is not that kind of list either. It doesn't give us those kind of rules. At first, it might look like it's giving us a bunch of rules. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shouldn't divorce your wife unless you've got the paperwork, right? You shouldn't swear falsely. This is checkbox religion, right? Done it, done it, done it. This is what the scribes and the Pharisees taught. Oh, I haven't killed anyone. Correct. Oh, have I committed adultery? Nope. Good there. I got divorced, but I did the paperwork. Good. I'm all good there. That's the way we want it, right? Easy answers, clear rules, religious regulations. But the Sermon on the Mount isn't about regulation. It's about transformation. The gospel isn't a rule book. The kingdom of God isn't a checklist. It's not handing you a new kind of answer book. It's calling you to be a new kind of person. Put another way, the Sermon on the Mount isn't about a checklist. It's about a changed heart. It isn't a new set of laws for you to memorize. Instead, it's this new outlook that you're called to live by. And you have to apply that outlook to everything in your life. You've got to figure out what it means for your life. And yes, that is the harder way. It is way easier to tick a bunch of boxes than it is to change your heart. It is easier to memorize a list of answers than to be transformed in how you think and how you act and how you treat others. But Jesus doesn't give us an easy way out. He doesn't give us easy answers. Here's what I mean. 6 times in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus repeats this cute little formula. He says, "You have heard it said, ... but I say to you." And each time, he's referring to some kind of black and white rule book rule that people had been taught. The Pharisees and the scribes, in order to make things easier for people, had kind of boiled the law down, or actually expanded the law out into a whole bunch of lists and a whole bunch of check boxes. In those days, it's important to know people really couldn't even really read the Bible for themselves. When God's people came back from exile, they didn't speak Hebrew anymore. They spoke Aramaic. The Bible was written in Hebrew. And so the scribes and the Pharisees, they had to interpret the Bible to the people. But interpretation turned into elaboration. And pretty soon there was more boxes and more lists and more regulations and more rules. So then Jesus steps in and he says, yeah, I know you've heard it said by those guys over the years. I know for hundreds of years you've heard it said, but I say to you, ... What a bold claim. And in some ways, what Jesus is saying is all those other interpreters, they're wrong. I'm going to give you the right interpretation. In fact, some people would even say that Jesus is almost saying, I was there when this law was written in the first place. I, God, was the one who gave this to you, so only I can properly interpret it for you. Martin Lloyd-Jones, I think he said it perfectly. He said, Jesus was not a mere teacher. He was not a mere man. He was not a mere expounder of the law, just like the scribes and Pharisees. He was infinitely more than that. He was God the Son in the flesh, presenting the truth of God. Isn't this amazing that 2,000 years ago, God himself walked among us and interpreted his own law for us. But when he did, he didn't give us a new law book or a new moral code. Rather than new rules, Jesus gives us a new outlook. It's like he doesn't want to treat us like children. He doesn't want to endlessly give us instructions. Don't do this, don't do that. Go here, turn left, turn right, stop right there. Instead, he says, grow up. Grow up into people who think and live and love differently because your hearts have been changed. The Sermon on the Mount isn't about ticking boxes. It's about becoming a new kind of person. It's not a list of regulations. It's about transformation. So today, rather than give you 40,000 rules, Jesus, I think, lays out four kingdom principles that we can apply to all the thorny, complicated issues that we face day in and day out. And I've given you some notes. Unfortunately, it's a checklist. Ugh, darn it. But you can follow along and take some notes as we go. Let's get started. The first principle that Jesus teaches us in the Sermon on the Mount is that it's not about the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. You see, the Pharisees, they obsessed over the surface. They obsessed over the exact wording, the precise rules. You know, they were the type of people who, when they downloaded an app and you got to check off all the terms and conditions, they loved reading that stuff, right? But Jesus is concerned with something deeper, the spirit of the law, not the letter of it. Right? He wants us to get at the heart behind these words. That's why Jesus says things like, don't just avoid murder, right? Avoid anger. That's the spirit of the law. Don't just avoid adultery. Avoid objectifying people in your mind. That is the spirit of the law. John Stott, he puts it beautifully. He says, Jesus' emphasis was not on the law's letter, which could be obeyed in a legalistic and mechanical way, but on the spirit. It's deeper intention. In other words, anyone here can technically obey do not murder and still carry bitterness and resentment and hatred in their heart. You can technically not commit adultery and still nurture lust in your heart. Jesus is not content with that, right? He will not settle just for external compliance. He's after internal transformation. Now, the Pharisees, right? They knew the law inside and out, but they forgot the spirit of the law was love. And we do the same thing all the time, don't we, right? We want to know, well, where's the line? And what's allowed? And what's forbidden? But Jesus seems to say the line isn't the point. Love is the point. When you live by the letter of the law, you need a rule for every single scenario. You're always asking, is this technically permitted? Can I do this? But when you live by the Spirit, you're asking a different kind of question. You're asking, does this reflect the Spirit, love, and grace that I see in Jesus Christ? Paul wrote, the law kills, the letter of the law kills, but the Spirit gives life. So that is the first principle Jesus teaches us. You got to go behind the letter of the law and see the spirit of the law. Now, here's the second principle that he gives us. It's not just about what you do. It's about why you do it. Right? The old mindset said, well, as long as I do the right thing, check, 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 it doesn't really matter where my heart is. Jesus says, not enough. He says, motives matter. You can't just bake cookies for your neighbor while secretly hoping they choke on them. Right? Motives, right? The kingdom people have different motives, right? They aren't motivated by anger or greed or hostility or the need to be seen. They're motivated by love and grace. Rules, they care only about your behavior, but Jesus cares about your motives. And the Sermon on the Mount isn't about being a better rule follower. It's about becoming someone whose motives are transformed from the inside out. That's why Dallas Willard says the aim of the Sermon on the Mount is not to get us to do what Jesus says, but to become the kind of people who would naturally do what Jesus says. That's the goal. Not just to check boxes, not just to look righteous on the outside. Well, there's resentment and lust and pride burning on the inside. It is easy to do that, right? Anybody can keep their temper in check, but seethe with bitterness. Anybody can stay faithful in their marriage, but still objectify others in their mind. But Jesus sees deeper. The Sermon on the Mount doesn't just ask, what did you do? It asks, why did you do it? Jesus is not after behavior modification. He's after heart transformation. So those are the first two principles in the kingdom of God. It's not about the letter of the law, but the spirit. And secondly, it's not just about what you do, but it's about why you do it. Here's the third principle. Kingdom life isn't just about what you avoid, but it's about what you pursue. You see, the Pharisees, they were masters at the don'ts. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't. And honestly, most of us, we think that's what it means to be holy. A whole bunch of different don'ts. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't hate, don't run with scissors, don't leave your dishes in the sink, don't eat carbs after 8 p.m., right? And yes, Sermon on the Mount has its share of don'ts, but it goes way deeper than that. Jesus isn't just interested in what you stay away from. He's calling you into a new way of life. Not a life of don'ts, but a life of do's. Do love. Do show mercy. Do justice. Do reconcile. Do give generously. You can avoid murder. Don't. But can you love your enemy? Do. You can avoid adultery. Don't. But can you honor others with your heart and your mind? Do. Jesus is calling us not just to abstain from evil, but to embody the good. John Stott says, the Christian life is not merely avoiding what is wrong, but actively pursuing what is good. Holiness is not a matter of avoiding sin, but loving righteousness. This is what makes this principle so much better than a rule book. Rule books just say, don't do that. Principles say, run toward the good. Be peacemakers. Be generous. Show mercy. The gospel doesn't just say, don't retaliate. It says, go the second mile. It doesn't just say, don't hate. It says, love your enemies. Jesus isn't just trying to hold us back from doing evil. He's pushing us in to the good life of the kingdom. He's pushing us into a life of mercy. He's pushing us into a life of compassion, into a life of forgiveness and generosity and love. That's the invitation of a Sermon on the Mount. Not just what to run from, but what to run toward. Life in the kingdom. It's not just about sin management. It's active love. And that brings us to the fourth and the final principle I think we find woven throughout the Sermon on the Mount, and that is, it's not about rules from God. It's about a relationship with God. You know, the scribes, they handed down traditions and regulations, long lists of do's and don'ts, but with all the rules, they kind of lost the relationship. And the relationship was what it was all about. It's kind of like planning for a wedding, but then forgetting to actually show up for the marriage. It's not about the rules. It's not about the rituals. It's not about the regulations. It's about the relationship. That's what we were celebrating this morning with Galen. Not that he's followed all the rules, but that he's entered into a relationship with the living God, his Father. Your Father loves you, right? The life described in the Sermon on the Mount is only possible because of your relationship with God. The kingdom norms Jesus gives us are rooted in relationship, not some legal duty. You know, as a parent, I want my children to listen to me, but not because of an arbitrary rule. I want them to listen to me because I'm their father, right? It's because of our relationship. And the same is with God. Our behavior doesn't flow from rules we got from God, but from a relationship we have with God. And that relationship we have with God, God's love, is shaping us on the inside. So let's recap. Living in the kingdom of God is not about the letter of the law, but it's about the spirit of the law, first principle. Secondly, it's not just about what you do, but it's about why you do it. That's the second principle. It's not just about what you avoid, but it's about what you pursue. That's the third principle. And then fourthly, it's not just about rules from God. It's about a relationship with God. Now, just quickly as I end, let me just show you how Jesus uses these principles to answer the difficult questions of his day. So when Jesus says, oh, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. Whoever murders is going to be liable to judgment. That seems pretty straightforward. Don't take someone's life and you're righteous. Box ticked, move on. That's the letter of the law. But Jesus says, no. You've missed the point entirely. Principle one right? It says, what's the spirit of the law? The spirit of the law is not about what you do with your hands. It's about the anger that you harbor in your heart. And actually, principle three says that it isn't just about what you don't do. Don't murder. You heard in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus actually says, go and make peace with people. In fact, if you realize that you have a problem with someone, before you even come to the altar and receive communion or give your gift, you go and you make it right. It's not about don't, it's about do. You reconcile with that person first, right? It's about becoming a person who loves peace and reconciliation. Same with adultery, right? With adultery, Jesus says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. That's the letter of the law. Once again, the Pharisees say, easy, check the box, move on. But Jesus says that's not enough, right? In the kingdom, it isn't just about what you do, it's about why you do it. What's the motives? What's going on in your heart? What are your desires saying? Why are you objectifying that person? Why are you lusting after that person? And you live in a relationship with this loving God, and he knows every thought in your heart, even the secret ones. All of these things come into play when Jesus is saying, this is how you decide what is right. Next, he says, whoever divorces his wife, let him give a certificate of divorce. The Pharisees treated this one as legal paperwork. Oh, you want out of your marriage? Then just get the paperwork right, letter of the law, tick the box, move on. Jesus says, it's not what this is about at all. The spirit of this is marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant to honor. And kingdom life is not just about trying to find loopholes, it's about God's own faithful love shown to you, principle 4. Right? It all flows from your relationship with God. All your relationships with your family, even your spouse, flow from your relationship with God. Principle 4. The rule book says, keep your oaths, right? As long as you swear properly and follow through, you should keep your oaths. But Jesus says, no. You shouldn't need to make an oath at all. You should be becoming a person who basically says yes and they mean yes, and they say no and they mean no, because you're just a trustworthy person, right? Right. The rule book says, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. If someone hits you, you are entitled to hit them back, but only to hit them back as hard as they hit you. Jesus says you're missing the spirit of it. The spirit isn't just about restraining your fist and keeping it down to one punch. It's about actually restraining your right to retaliate altogether and pursuing peace instead. It's about turning the other cheek. It's about going the second mile. It's about being generous. It's about the spirit of the law, not the letter. Finally, like the rule book says, love your neighbor, you hate your enemy. Jesus says no. Kingdom life goes deeper. Principle 1, it's about the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. It's not just about why or what you do, it's about why you do it. It's about what you pursue, not just what you're avoiding. In principle 4, it's all about this relationship with God. If you apply all those 4 principles to this ancient law, Jesus says you're actually going to love your enemies. You're going to pray for those who persecute you, right? Not out of duty, because you know what the Father's love looks like in your own life, right? So here's the thing. The kingdom is not about checking boxes. It's about becoming a new kind of person, one who reflects the heart of God. Now, those were the questions, those were the burning questions people were asking in Jesus' day, right? But maybe your questions you're asking today, it's not about adultery or divorce or oaths. It could be you've got a different decision to make. You've got a different relationship you're trying to manage. You've got a different question in your mind, and you're like, I don't know what the right thing is. Of course, you've got a Bible. Read it. And of course, there are good books and commentaries and teachers and personalities out there, and they can probably help you figure out the right thing to do in every situation, the right solution to any problem. And you know what? Sometimes we need that. I'm not going to poo-poo that. Sometimes we need wisdom from other people that can be very, very helpful as we navigate life's complexities. But beware easy answers. Beware simplistic solutions. Even beware the church that hands you a long list of rules and says, this is how you live. This is how you think. Because when I read the Sermon on the Mount, it seems to me that Jesus invites us into something deeper and better, not a rule book to follow, but a relationship to live. Not just external compliance, but inner transformation. Not just avoiding sin, but actively pursuing goodness and mercy and love and justice. And when we live by his principles, and when we walk closely with him in his kingdom, we won't just be given the right kind of answers. We'll become the right kind of people. So thanks be to God. Amen.